The Southeast Asia region is currently confronted by several challenges regarding energy security and climate change goals. The region has an increasing population, which will require Southeast Asia to meet the energy needs of its citizens. At the same time, the region is confronted with the heavy demand of committing to carbon neutrality emission goals. Many clean energy options are available, such as solar, wind, hydro, or nuclear. However, the special thing about nuclear power compared to other options is that it provides a high energy density, meaning that a small amount of energy fuel can produce a large amount of electricity, which would be attractive for any region that is expecting a large increase in population that needs an efficient and clean energy source. Therefore, under these conditions, it would seem that nuclear energy would be a good option in the Southeast Asian region. However, the Southeast Asian region faces unique challenges which would create complications to transition towards nuclear energy. As of now, Southeast Asia does not have any nuclear energy plants, so does not have any existing frameworks within its own region to work off to further increase nuclear energy production, which is why my general research question will be the following. In the context of Southeast Asia, how does the viability of nuclear energy as a clean energy option compare to other alternatives? And what are the implications for regional energy security, political stability, and international cooperation in the pursuit of climate-related policies? The question entails understanding public perception of nuclear energy, the overall political state within the region, what natural disaster possibilities confront the region which could threaten the stability of a nuclear power plant, resource access to uranium which powers the nuclear power plants, and the overall implications brought by introducing nuclear energy into the region for how it could affect further climate initiatives. After considering these general questions through my research, I managed to construct an argument. The argument I'll be putting forward is the following. Nuclear energy, although usually considered an efficient form of clean energy in the context of the Southeast Asian region, it is not the most viable option when considering other clean energy options. Prospects of increasing nuclear energy investment in projects could raise issues regarding energy security and overall political stability in the region. This would create further issues in regional and international cooperation, which would hamper the effectiveness and acceptance of other climate-related policy due to its multilateral cooperative nature. The current population in Southeast Asia is about 700 million. That is expected to rise to 726 million by 2030. The energy demand increase in the region is 6% annually, which makes it one of the fastest growing amongst the world. The region has a strong commitment to bringing power to all its citizens by 2030. For many countries in the region, coal serves as a big source of energy. In the case of Indonesia, which represents 40% of energy consumption in the region, 60% of the energy relies on coal. Their biggest source of renewable energy is hydropower. In Southeast Asia, hydropower stands out as the most significant renewable energy source, with countries like Cambodia depending on it for 44% of their energy needs, while Laos relies even more heavily, with 66% of its energy coming from hydropower. A research article that looks at the specific cases of Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Myanmar finds that each of these countries possesses rich hydropower resources. Throughout these countries and the region in general exist several rivers that can produce many megawatts of electricity. In countries such as Thailand, there is a potential for 15,000 megawatts, but as of now, only a quarter is being exploited as of 2013. In the case of Indonesia, it has an accessible 34,000 megawatts to exploit, but it is a reduction from its 75,000 full potential, which is due to the island fragmentation. Nevertheless, about 10% of Indonesia's power production relies on hydropower. In Myanmar, there is a potential for 39,000 megawatts, and one of its large-scale hydropower plants takes up 25,000 of that. In the case of Malaysia, although considering its rapid economic growth, oil and gas and other fossil fuels do not increase at the same rapid rate. It is notable the considerable increase of hydroelectricity, which accounts for 10% of their energy production. Malaysia has a potential for 22,500 megawatts, but has only exploited 1,491 of that. Some other research articles that will serve as a foundation for my argument include one that conducts a survey about the overall approval of nuclear energy among citizens in the region. The countries included within the study are Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The article found that generally speaking, people were against the introduction of nuclear energy in the region. Another article speaks on the resource availability of uranium within Southeast Asia. It notes that there is no commercial uranium reserves in the region, Therefore, it would require foreign trade to meet the supply of uranium necessary to power prospective nuclear plants. I also use an article that touches on Southeast Asian nationalism. It speaks on how political liberalization and democratization in Southeast Asia have created conditions for greater mass participation in politics, leading to the emergence of grassroots nationalist movements. Civil society organizations, social media, and expanded freedom of expression have provided platforms for citizens to voice their nationalist sentiments and hold governments accountable. However, democratization has also unleashed ethno-nationalist tensions as competing groups battle for political power and resources. Also important, another of the articles speaks on the natural disaster hazards that exist in the region that can overall complicate the existence of nuclear plants in the region. All the articles so far mentioned will help address my general questions and will be further elaborated on in the next section. I will expand on these resources and their findings to support my argument of why nuclear energy is not the most feasible option for Southeast Asia, pathway towards net zero emissions. The question of why people are against nuclear energy in the Southeast Asia region relies a lot on the fact that Southeast Asia's natural disasters present a threat to the stability and structure of nuclear power plants. Volatile and extreme weather experienced in the region, such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons, are a major cause of concern. The countries included in the study were Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The measure for approval within the study was 1 equals strongly disagreed to 5 equals strongly approve. In Indonesia, the approval was 2.87, Malaysia was 2.32, Singapore was 2.29, Thailand was 1.52, and Vietnam was 2.25. As mentioned, the view is generally against the adoption of nuclear energy amongst some of the most economically powerful countries in the region, and this data shows that. Some of the indicators for why public approval was low is due to events such as Chernobyl, or more recently the Fukushima incident, which has diminished public approval of nuclear energy. Given all these factors, it would be expected that citizens would oppose government enactment of nuclear power plants out of fear of their own safety. On the line of nationalistic sentiment among citizens of Southeast Asia, there has been a notable rise in nationalism which would add another layer of resistance to nuclear energy. The nationalism present in Southeast Asia today is in part a reaction to China's rise as a regional power, coupled with its assertive behavior in territorial disputes within the South China Sea, which has heightened nationalist sentiments across the region. Nuclear energy would be an issue for nationalists in the region because the introduction of nuclear energy would be largely a work of foreign countries trading and assisting the region to implement a technology that Southeast Asia is not very familiar with. As noted already, Southeast Asia does not have any commercial reserves of the resource uranium. Therefore, it does not have an abundance of the rare material. It would have to partner with countries such as Australia in order to have a safe and abundant supply to efficiently power its prospective nuclear plants. However, it remains a question of how compliant Australia would be with Southeast Asia countries and trading with them due to concerns of nuclear arms proliferation and other general issues. Additional safety concerns would be the possibility of nuclear resources being trafficked in the region sea, which would require further regional cooperation from ASEAN member countries to assure the safety of these resources when being traded along these routes. Piracy is a big issue in Southeast Asia, so it would have to be heavily monitored. Therefore, a shift to nuclear energy would increase dependency for international imports of rare materials and technology for an energy that is highly controversial and predominantly opposed to by people living in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is fairly integrated into the global economy, especially in the case of Malaysia and Singapore. The Southeast Asian countries highly rely on trade, where China exists as a big partner. Southeast Asian countries import many manufactured goods from China. I bring up this point because I do not mean to say that foreign imports are the issue, as is already established that Southeast Asian countries highly rely on Chinese imports. It is rather that it would be seen from the point of view that, in sake of committing to regional and international net zero climate goals, that unwanted policies such as nuclear energy would be implemented, which would create further dissent around the international engagement on introducing the technology and power into the region. A popular example that follows this logic is during Bolsonaro's presidency in Brazil, when the electorate chose on a Brazilian far-right nationalist. Bolsonaro's presidency saw a commitment to domestic industries, including those within the Amazon forest, such as forestry and agriculture, which went against international commitments to net zero emission goals, which saw the Amazon as an important piece in that mission. Although this isn't exactly the sentiment shared in Southeast Asian countries, but it serves as a general guidelines of how nationalism can negatively impact the adoption of climate-friendly policies. What relates more to the specific case of Southeast Asia, which is still tied to principles of nationalism, is found in a research publication that phrases the sentiment as clean energy and critical mineral nationalism. These terms note the catalyst in Southeast Asia towards making considerable efforts in adopting climate-friendly energies, which goes contrary to other forms of nationalism, such as the one in Brazil that has opposed climate policy. Clean energy and critical mineral nationalism entails a host state's strategy or behavior aimed at increasing control over clean energy by restricting the international supply of renewable energy or the materials needed for clean energy technologies. A transition into nuclear energy would go against this principle that has been so important in Southeast Asia in terms of adopting clean energies, since nuclear energy requires imports from other countries of precious materials such as uranium and other technologies that would be necessary to help develop nuclear energy in the region. Thus, it would not fulfill mineral nationalism's criteria. The term mineral nationalism fits for resources such as wind, solar, and hydro, which are all easily accessible in the Southeast Asian region. As already mentioned, in the case of hydropower, there exists a great potential for more hydropower to be exploited in the countries of Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Myanmar. And it already serves as a big source of electricity in these countries, so there would be a solid framework to build off, unlike nuclear power. The exploration of nuclear energy in Southeast Asia possesses significant challenges, particularly in the context of nationalism and regional cooperation. The region already relies heavily on hydropower as a source of electricity, providing a solid foundation for further development in renewable energy. However, the adoption of nuclear energy could exacerbate nationalist sentiments and hinder regional cooperation efforts, especially in relation to climate action. Given the current state of nationalism in Southeast Asia, heavily relied to critical mineral nationalism, policymakers must carefully consider the implications of any energy policy decisions. Intense shifts towards nuclear energy could heighten concerns over international dependency and lead to further obstacles for regional and international cooperation, particularly in climate-related policy initiatives. Therefore, prioritizing safer and domestically available renewable energy options such as solar, wind, and hydro would be a more politically stable and beneficial course of action. This approach would not only mitigate potential nationalist backlash, but also pave the way for more effective climate policy action, ensure greater regional and international cooperation in addressing environmental challenges. It is important that Southeast Asia continues to build off the current snowball of climate policy and action that has been grounded in the term clean energy and critical mineral nationalism. It has been an important synthesis between climate action and nationalism, and to work against it would be a mistake by policy leaders. Introducing technology that is reasonably opposed by citizens could ultimately frustrate efforts towards working to a greener tomorrow, where the nationalistic sentiment could shift from general approval of climate action to overall disapproval on the perception that the multilateralism of climate action has encroached them, introducing foreign technology and resources, making them dependent.